everybody, Plushie here, and today I just wanted to make a casual video talking about my personal top 5 picks of the 30 million download campaign SSR ticket. And this video is mainly going to be aimed towards players that have a relatively built roster but are just missing a couple of pieces, and they're mostly going to be servants either with unique traits or just straight up pure supports, because with the advent of the evocation shop, a lot of the powerful welfare DPSs are infinitely accessible, and they most likely will be better choices than to pick like just an MP1 copy of an unupgraded MP, especially SSR DPS. So if you are a completely new player who doesn't have the best access to the welfare shop yet, I think you can just pick whatever you like, but you can watch some of my older videos as well. Those might fit you a little bit better. And if you are a veteran player, I do suggest using this opportunity to level up the MP levels of some of your, especially like story locked servants. If you don't have them at high MP level, it might be better than just to pick an MP1 DPS. So if you aren't like the main demographic to this video, I guess just take that with a grain of salt or just listen to it as entertainment. Anyways, hope you guys enjoyed the video, and let's get into the top 5 list. So before we actually get into the top 5 list, I want to bring up a character I won't be including in this year's list, which is of course Waver. Now Waver is in a very complicated situation because his value drastically drops off the more 50 MP chargers you have, and currently in the game there are a lot of 50 MP chargers, and every single meta support also are MP 50 chargers. So if you have like 2 to 3 of them, which honestly is not uncommon nowadays, even for like light spenders, even free-to-play players, Waver is just going to be very, very redundant, I feel. Like Castoria generally serves as a better universal 50 MP charger, for example, and also Rhaenys, if you do have her, post-buff is a lot stronger than Waver in my opinion. Yes, he serves the unique niche of having a spread battery of 10, 10, 30, so there might be very niche weird comps that require that, but usually those are not optimal anyways, and the buff values that he provides, in my opinion, are just not good enough anymore. 50% crit up is really nice, 30% attack up is also pretty nice, 30% defense up, like it's still generally good, right? But let's take a couple of recently buffed servants and take a look. For example, like Ruler Artoria used to be considered a super niche card shuffle support that nobody wants. Well, she gives 40% attack up and 50% crit up for the entire party, and also gives you a better hand. So Ruler Artoria I actually would use a lot more over Waver if I'm going for a quicker clear approach. And then also if we look at some of the stronger supports like Merlin, Merlin after his second skill buff basically provides as much or even better buffs than Waver with just his first 2 skills. And couple all of that together with Waver's MP not being the greatest thing ever, it's just a chance to stun and AoE MP drain. I really cannot recommend you to pick him, especially if you have a lot of 50 chargers like I said earlier. But if you are a super new player and you don't have like any supports, Waver is still a very convenient and powerful servant that doesn't really need you to level up most of his skills to be efficient as well. So you can still pick him, but that is very much reserved for people who are severely lacking in their roster. Number 5 on my top recommended list is going to be Taikobo, or Taigong Wang, the AoE quick Rider. This might come as a surprise to some people because he really isn't the most popular servant ever, and I really don't see him put onto support lists that much, but he really is kind of underrated. He serves a lot of different purposes, mainly as a multi-core farmer, but occasionally also as an anti-divine boss killer, and even as niche support to specific units. So Taikobo is perhaps most well known for his 3rd skill, which is a self 50 MP battery and a party 20 MP battery. This obviously serves very well to charge himself, but also help the party get their MP as well. He's a great sort of slot in to clear a single wave while supporting another, most of the time single target DPS to clear the other 2 waves in 90++. His first skill, of course, also buffs the entire party with 15% attack up, MP damage up, and quick up for 3 turns, so he is particularly great when paired with another quick DPS, but sometimes just for the attack up and MP damage up, you can even pair him up with non-quick DPSs in farming. And his second greatest trait is, of course, his massive amounts of damage against Divine. His second skill already gives him 50% power mod against Demonic and Divine for 3 turns. This, of course, includes both his MP and his face card, so he'll be doing great damage to both of those traits, which are both really common against enemies. But his MP, of course, further has 150% super effective against Divine enemies. So if you are using him against like a Divine boss, he's going to be doing single target damage as an AoE servant, which is of course really good. His MP also has a quick down ramp up effect if you are using him in a challenge quest. So despite his lack of any like survival or even like utility skills such as buff removal or invul pierce and whatnot, he's still great specifically against Divine in boss fights. His skill seal also particularly bodes well with Bazette because you can guarantee the enemies to attack and trigger her counter, but I didn't even take that into consideration when ranking him, to be honest. And overall, he's just really convenient to use, especially when you're facing off against Divine. Like even at MP1, he does really good damage. I've also definitely used like double Taikobo in certain farming comps when they're both like Divine waves for wave 1 and wave 2. And overall, he's just really good. I don't know why he's so underrated to most people. Number 4 on my list is going to be Ozymandias, the single target Buster Rider, and he's also the only pure DPS I'm going to be talking about today. Well, he does have some party support utility, but most of the time you are using him as just a main DPS. The main reason I'm picking him is because of his cracked MP upgrade, giving him full access to his skill 1 effects that require Sunfield, as well as keeping his skill cooldowns extremely short. He's, in my opinion, one of the strongest single targets period in the game, and it's definitely good enough to use in neutral situations and not just against casters. He also has an upgraded MP, as I just said, so his base MP damage is really decent even just at MP1, and I believe he is just a better unit than the other 2 free welfares even at MP5 from the Evocation Shop, Kintoki Rider, and Ryoma. So yeah, let's take a brief look at his skill set. His first skill gives the party 20% attack up, and Under the Sun also gives 10 star per turn for 3 turns, as well as party 30% crit up. It's a really powerful effect even if you just count it for himself, and it's also on a really short cooldown, and the Sun condition is very easily met because his MP sets the Sun. The second skill is of course good old Imperial Privilege, trading away consistency for very powerful effects and high uptime. Once again, 40% attack up, defense up, and a heal on a 5-turn cooldown is quite insane, especially if you consider the cooldown reduction from his MP. And then finally, the third skill is just a party-wide buff success rate up, as well as a 20 MP battery, which helps with his skill 2, but the only problem is its cooldown is 6, so it doesn't completely line up with his skill 2. But the biggest part of his strength, of course, comes from his MP. It's already strong with its basic effects, with the MP seal being able to stop the enemies from charging their MP, as well as the ramp up defense down effect, giving him better damage both on his MP and his cards. But the upgraded MP also gave him 5 turns of Sun, so essentially he's never gonna run out of Sun because he can definitely use his MP a lot more frequently than once every 5 turns, and it also reduces all of his skills cooldowns by 1. So his skill cooldowns are already short, it's 5, 5, 6, but with this effect, sometimes combo with Koyan Light and Append 5, he's gonna be, double stacking or sometimes even triple stacking his skills. His MP is quite spammable as well because of his really decent arts card gain. It's 0.59% per hit on a 3-hit arts card and 5-hit quick card as well, and he can get a lot of stars just from using his skill 1, and he sort of just spirals out of control the more he spams his MP. And of course, Ozzy also has some utility in multi-core, even though I wouldn't say it's very good. Like, yes, the first skill does give you star per turn as well as a crit up for the entire party, so there is a potential to use him for, crit-centric multi-core farming comps. But once again, in a farming comp, you will have to activate activate that Sun field first by using his MP before clicking that skill 1, unless the field's already Sun, which is not that rare, but still it's not guaranteed. And by that time, the flexibility is a lot more limited, and 20 party charge is not that great, considering he doesn't have a bigger self-charge. So I think he's mainly going to be a challenge quest unit still, but as a challenge quest unit, he can do solos, he can do just standard buster team, he can even do class stacking. So for example, if you're fighting a caster, you might not want to bring Koyan Light because she just dies very easily because she gets counterclass. You can just bring multiple riders in your team, and Ozymandias' party buff now actually does benefit others and not just himself. So despite being a pure DPS, I think he is one of the strongest single targets in the game. Once again, that's why I put him on the list. Number 3 on my top recommended list is gonna come as a surprise, which is Jeanne d'Arc. Jeanne, who has been made fun of non-stop since the inception of Castoria, is back onto the recommended SSR list and all the way up to number 3. Well, once again, I understand why this is a controversial pick, because even after her amazing buff earlier this year, she's essentially a mini Castoria, and most of her roles do overlap with what Castoria already does. But the good thing about Jeanne is she does not overlap with Castoria completely, so she doesn't interfere with some of Castoria's operations. For example, you can use her invul to protect one of your members if their solemn defense gets worn down due to bad RNG, while the other ones still have their solemn defenses up. She also has heal, which is the one thing that Castoria does not have, so I do think she serves as a really good secondary support in your arts team. Jeanne's entire skill set, especially skill 1 and her triple arts deck, also just synergizes very well with Castoria. That skill 1 gives the entire party 20% arts up for 3 turns, as well as 20% MP charge, which helps your entire party get their MP back easier, including herself, which is super important of course, and also boosts the main DPS's damage by a little bit. It also gives 15 stars per turn for 3 turns, which is a really good effect because arts teams usually don't generate stars very easily, and 15 stars is quite the big number. Skill 2 is quite lackluster. You know, the defense down is a nice little damage boost, but it's not that great. The MP damage down is essentially useless because you won't be taking any MP damage with this comp. And the third skill is very situational. If you're up against a servant, especially with like very fast charging MP gauges, then this can be really useful for buying you extra turns, but sometimes this is just completely useless if you're not fighting against a servant. And once again, the MP, just as I mentioned before, is like a mini Castoria MP with a heal, which patches up Castoria's like one weakness in terms of her MP. My favorite part about this team is essentially you feel ultra safe. You have 2 Castoria MPs essentially that doesn't interfere with each other. So what I end up doing is I spam Castoria's MP a lot more recklessly. I use it whenever it is available, and I also use it before the DPS's MP without overcharging it sometimes, just to, you know, push more damage, because when push goes to shove, I at least always have Jeanne's MP to block the enemy's MP damage. So this is a really safe team and it's really powerful. It might still be a controversial pick, especially considering Castoria will be on rate up during this celebration campaign. So if you don't have her, you should still try your hardest to get her. But if you just can't really part with your budget, then Jeanne is probably your second best choice for this kind of job. And there are even quests where Jeanne might be better than Castoria in terms of defensive, because they have so many enemies that will attack like 6 times total in a turn, which will wear down your solemn defense very quickly and can even break through one of them in a single turn. So having Jeanne's fully 1-turn invul that isn't hit-based can potentially be better in very niche cases. My number 2 recommendation is Jinako, and this might come as a surprise to some people, but for people who actually do try more alternative team builds, they will understand how broken Jinako is, because she is the strongest anti-lawful support in the game. And even outside of anti-lawful, she's a semi-decent support already. Her first skill is a party-wide 20 MP charge as well as 20% attack up, and 15 star per turn for 3 turns. So it's a really good blend of party-wide effects that can also help with farming because of the charisma combo with the 20% charge. It's essentially Merlin's charisma skill, right? And even better because it has star per turn. And Jinako's third skill is the most important one. It gives an ally 1 turn of invul, 1 turn of 30% MP gain up, 3 turns of 30% MP damage up, and 3 turns of 50% anti-lawful damage. And as a demerit, it does skill seal them for a single turn, but you can easily deal with that in a challenge quest with Castora's MP, and in farming, you just have to dump all of your DPS's skill on turn 1, so it's not that big of a deal. So this, of course, helps your DPS loop, as well as give them massive amounts of damage against lawful. So she can actually be used as a support against lawful in single core looping, and in a challenge quest or min turning in particular, that anti-lawful is extremely strong. Imagine Santa Martha against Divine, but the anti-lawful version, but you don't actually have to even commit your MP. This is just a skill that is extremely powerful. Of course, Jinako is not just good at supporting min-turn comps, she's just good at supporting period as a tank. Her skill 3 is a great damage steroid, but remember, it also protects your main DPS with that invul effect, and it's only on a super short 5-turn cooldown. Her second skill is a taunt that is also on a short 5-turn cooldown that can allow her to negate even more damage and protect your other 2 party members. Because of her high HP, she can take a lot more abuse, and also her MP can give her 1 turn of invul, which you can perfectly combo with her skill 2 to block an enemy's single target MP. The MP also heals herself, so you don't have to worry about her being slowly worn down as a tank, and the MP also casts a whopping 30% defense down on all enemies, acting as a damage boosting steroid. So Jinako just is a super competent tank support, especially when you're fighting against lawful once again. Jinako also is amazing at soloing because of her MP once again. Like, her refund isn't the greatest, but she can still spam it a lot easier than servants such as Qin Huang, who just doesn't have damage on their MP. Jinako also just has a triple arts deck, so she can continue the cycle of doing MPAA, triple arts, MPAA until the end of time, and basically never wear down on HP. You can also use her invul on herself in a solo to block off even more damage, and the skill seal is easily negated with the debuff immunity command code or the debuff removal command code, because obviously you have all of her cards forever in a solo. So overall, Jinako is just such a powerful servant in multiple aspects. She's really good at soloing, she's really good at supporting damage, and she's also a really competent tank. And people still think she's bad somehow just because she's bad at arts looping, which is quite ridiculous because of how many good arts loopers we already have. We don't need another unit like that, but you don't really have another unit like Jinako. So yeah, I definitely recommend picking her up. I think she's one of the strongest supports right now. Is essentially a modern version of something like Nero Bride as a support. So, you know, definitely worth the pick. So before we get into number 1 on the list, I want to make a couple of honorable mentions. Number 1, Nikola Tesla. He's honestly the closest to getting onto the list. I'm very much struggling between putting either him or Ozzy on the list because they're both pure DPSs but both extremely overtuned. There's definitely an argument to pick Nikola Tesla over Ozzy because in terms of the power level of welfare servants in the evocation shop, single target riders are actually a lot stronger than AoE archers as DPSs, right? Like, as AoE archers, we only have Nightingale as well as Nobunaga, and they're both not really good. And on the contrary, Nikola Tesla is insane. He has a really good upgraded wide coverage anti-trait MP with anti-sky and earth servants. He also is a 50 MP charger, so he fits perfectly into double Koyan Sky as looping system. And he also has all of his buffs RNG effects no longer be RNG because of his skill upgrade. He even has great survival with the guts and one of the strongest batteries in the game in the form of Pioneer of the Stars, giving him 3 turns of Invul Pierce as well as a Star Bomb on top of the battery itself. The MP even has a chance to stun, so he also has really good crowd control. Honestly, I really want to put him on the list. Just basically treat him as if he's on the list with Ozzy. Just because it's a top 5 list, I had to exclude him, but he is on the same power level. The second honorable mention, in my opinion, is Neocris Alter. So Neocris Alter can obviously serve as a mediocre AoE arts looper. Like, she has worse refund, but she has 100 MP battery. She has an anti-trait in the form of anti-man, but because she herself is Sky attribute, Sky on the attribute triangle is weak to man, so the hidden multiplier is going to be 0.9. So the anti-man effectiveness is not going to be as great as most other anti-man servants. Her second best job is, of course, being a 100 MP charger with insta-kill on MP, but her insta-kill is actually only better than the caster version on a single wave, which, I mean, most of the times you're only using her for one wave anyways, but it's not that much better. She's definitely very convenient. I personally use her a lot in the Bleach Earth QP quest, but that's about the only place I use her, honestly, which is a bit awkward. Like, yes, she only does one job, but she does that one job very well, so give or take, that's why she's not that high on the list. And finally, I want to bring up Maeve. She's a little bit similar to Taikobo, where she has party-wide MP charge and an anti-trait MP on her own, and she even has an upgraded MP, so her damage at MP1 is not shabby at all, but her problem mainly is that the charge, despite being 30, only works on fairies and males, and also the attack up only works on males, so the roster that she can work with is a lot narrower than Taikobo. And the other biggest problem is that she herself is not fairy nor male, so she doesn't charge herself, so getting her own MP up is actually a struggle. So yeah, that's why she's only here. And finally, my top pick for the SSR ticket is, of course, Tamamo no Mae, and if you don't have Tamamo, I heavily recommend grabbing at least one copy. So why is she still this good after all these years without a major buff? Well, first of all, let's talk about her in a vacuum. So Tamamo's skill set is already really solid. Like, first skill is a really short cooldown drain, so the enemy really doesn't get to MP very often. Also, 30% MP damage up. Combo that with her third skill's 50% arts up, and she is still one of the most efficient support in terms of buffing arts MP damage, especially if you consider Oberon. Her skill 2, also 5-turn cooldowns, is a 1-turn 60% defense up and 2-turn 30% defense up. So it keeps herself alive very well. You basically never have to babysit her. She's gonna keep herself at max HP at all times, essentially. And of course, all of her skills are on 5-turn cooldowns, which is already short, but considering her MP reduces cooldown, and now even with Append 5 potentially, those skills have no downtime. Like, if you're using her in an arts team, her skills have more like 4 to 3 turn cooldown consistently. So she's gonna be able to have these skills up almost consistently, like permanently, on your main DPS. So a really powerful support already if we look at it that way. Her MP, of course, also patches up the one thing that Castoria cannot do, which is healing, and also her MP charges the party's MP, so the entire party use their MP even more, including herself. So she just sort of goes into a perpetual loop, and then she spirals out of control. And of course, the cooldown reduction is the most unique thing. They have never printed another character that has the ability to reduce the entire party's cooldown on a spammable MP, because they realize how scary this effect is. So the reason Tamamo has remained so high up on the priority list and actually even climbed even higher is because cooldown reduction as an effect acts very differently from every other skill effect in the game. So every other skill effect in the game, their power level is static, right? Like a 50% buster up is always going to be a 50% buster up. It's just as powerful as a 50% buster up. But a skill cooldown reduction scales with how powerful her partners are. And as time passed, we have gotten so many units, especially art units, with absolutely busted skills, especially arts units. Like, let's just take a look at the most recent one, BB Dubai. Her second skill, full buff purge, arts down, and gives her anti-trait, 100% attack down on all enemies. That's just one skill, right? And then the third skill, of course, big battery, allows her to switch her MP type. First skill, party charge, that actually helps Tamamo get her MP back even more, and etc. So like, the skills nowadays are just completely on a different level than skills on older servants, and being able to recast those skills at a higher frequency is extremely broken. So in my opinion, currently the strongest arts support core is Tamamo plus Castoria, even better than Proto Merlin in a lot of the cases, especially if the arts DPS you're using is really modern and has really broken skills. And this is probably also why Lasengo's really hesitant on buffing Tamamo, just because any buff you give her, she's going to make its value exponential by spamming it a lot more frequently than any other servant. So yeah, Tamamo, despite all the lack of buff memes, still is at the top in terms of being a support. Her only weakness is her inability to help in farming. Even though there are some meme comps involving her, I really don't think they're practical. So if you really only care about farming, I guess you could consider skipping her and going for Jinako. But for everyone else, I think if you don't have Tamamo, you should absolutely own one. Hope you guys enjoyed the video, and the reason why there's only 5 servants recommended here is because I truly feel if you really want to be optimal with picking stuff with this ticket, first and foremost, you should go for your favorite, because once again, this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. This only happens every couple of years, so your preference should go beyond gameplay, and also it really depends on your personal account situation as to what you should pick. So I only recommended the most generically good units. They don't always apply, and feel free to comment. I will try to reply to as many as possible if you really have a question. But yeah, see you guys in the next video, and I hope this was a little bit helpful.